Welcome into Hail Varsity Postgame show. I'm Ravi. That's Rico here at our individual basements. Rico, that sucked.
Yeah, that was one of the least fun football games I've had the pleasure of watching in a few weeks, actually.
It's been that long.
Yeah, yeah, it's just been a couple of weeks.
Which one did you hate more?
This one,
This one or Minnesota?
this one, this one, hands
All right.
down. The Minnesota one, like you played bad, but it wasn't like you lost by a double digits, but this one felt like Penn State could have run it up a lot more. Like the Minnesota one, it felt like both teams were just really bad. This one, Penn State, this was the kind of game that I was expecting when Penn State was ranked. Like this
Yeah.
was the Penn State team that I was expecting Nebraska to have to face with James Franklin and them being in the midst of a college football playoff hunt.
Yeah. To be totally honest, this isn't even what I expected when I thought they'd lose this game at the beginning of the season. Like, it just isn't. Um, Obviously I was wrong about how this game was going to go. Like, like that's a given, but I didn't, especially in this context, I don't think anybody thought the game was going to go this way. Right. Like,
No.
obviously I've gotten a lot of people on Twitter that are like, hey, I guess Vegas was right. I was like, not really. I mean, like, Vegas was still off by like 27 or however many points, right? Like,
Yeah. Vegas
Vegas
didn't
was
think it was going to
only,
be this bad.
yeah, like and listen, like, I was wrong. Vegas was wrong. Vegas was 6 more points or so more right than I was going to, but,
Yep.
or that I was, but I just think it's kind of funny. Like, literally, maybe a handful of fans. I don't want to speak for everybody, but almost no one I talked to thought the game was going to go this way.
No.
So it's like we were all wrong. I was the most wrong, sure, and that's fine. And I was the loudest wrong. That's fine. Like, I can eat that. But no one thought the game was going to go this way. Like, not anyone
Nobody
that
was.
no one that I actually heard from. Like, there were some people that thought they were going to get gashed on the ground and whatever. And sure, like, that's fine. That's what happened, right? I thought the Nebraska running back game defense had been improved. It obviously regressed tonight, or maybe they just saw better players, a better line tonight. That's totally fair. But no one I talked to thought the game was going to go like this. I mean, I think Tim Verghese said they were going to lose, and he said like 24-20. Like, everybody had it
There
in.
were people who thought Nebraska was going to lose who had
Yeah.
this a lot closer than this one. Like we heard from Tim on Friday, and he said, look, when you line these two teams up, like Penn State has better athletes. Like they have better players than Nebraska does, regardless of, losing their quarterback or whatever. He's like, this is still a very talented Penn State team. But he still thought it was going to be a close game. Regardless, we had a few people who thought Penn State was going to win, but nobody had it over 10 points. Everybody thought it was still going to be close, that Nebraska was going to be able to score, and that Nebraska wasn't going to get gashed as much as they did. And they did. Like, it happens. Unfortunately, it happens to Nebraska way too often. And what really irks me is that, and I texted you this. Well, no, I almost texted you this. I didn't. Is that Nebraska's defensive coordinator, John Butler, and everybody in the Nebraska media, everybody in the Nebraska fan base knows that Nebraska's rush defense is leaky. It has some holes.
Yeah.
And it seems like they have done nothing to fix it. I don't know
I
what you
mean,
can do in the middle of the season to fix it, and I understand
so
it could just be players. John Butler could be putting them in the right position. They could be coaching it up. They could be doing all these things, and they're just not tackling. They're not filling the holes, or Penn State is just very good at blocking, which this offensive line coming into the season for the Nittany Lions was touted as a very, very, very good offensive line, and they've been showing that the last few weeks.
yeah, so I think the big thing there is leaky yardage indicates to me that they're in the right spots. Otherwise, it would be gashing yardage, right? Leaky
Mm-hmm.
yardage indicates you make the hit, you don't make the tackle. It goes from what should be a 3-yard gain to a 6 or 7-yard gain, right?
Yep.
So that's, to me, that means they're in the right spots and they're not able to execute in terms of making the play. So like I have a hard time saying, well, hey, they got to fix the scheme or whatever. Otherwise, it wouldn't be leaky yardage, right? That's did you see a guy hit a guy? You see someone hit a guy at 1 or 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, it ends up being a 5, 6, 7 yard gain, right? To me, that's execution, and that's players having to execute it better. Personally, like that's how I view that versus the runs against Michigan or some of the early big plays against Penn State in the game here. Those are more more possibly schematic calls, right? Without seeing all 22 or knowing what the call was, I don't know if it was a busted coverage or whatever, but I know like Michigan, for instance, those were at least to a certain degree schematic calls, not, hey, you hit a guy, you got to tackle. So, like at some point, the players just have to make plays. Right. So that's what I saw mostly, especially after the first couple drives for Penn State. I thought schematically, Nebraska gave themselves a chance after the first couple drives. Defensively, I really did. They just could not stop them on initial contact, and that has been that's been an issue, right? So Josh says, sorry, the coaches coach the execution at this point. It's either tolerated or taught. It might just be the guys aren't capable of it, or you don't have guys to put in there that are that's on the table, right? Like you have this trying to weigh guys that know the scheme that puts them in the right position to make the play versus guys that are physically capable of making the play. You know what I mean? So the guys that are physically capable of making the play may not be the same guys that are capable of being in the right spot to make the play at this point in their career, right? So I think that's sort of the tug of war we're dealing with here. Here's the other thing that I've said this kind of throughout the year that I've been frustrated by. I thought a lot of the early stuff was because we were chasing them in man-to-man defense. Even the runs, right? DB talked about this on the broadcast. They were putting guys on the move. They were getting Nebraska out-leveraged than before they even snapped the ball, right? Because Nebraska was chasing before they even snapped the ball. Then you're already beat to the corner, right? So that's one of the like when I say I hate watching guys chase, that's part of it. Part of it ends up being on passing plays. A lot of it ends up being on running plays, like we saw early tonight. So that's a really frustrating part of this for me. Is I see this, I'm like, that's one of the reasons I prefer a zone defense. Now I'm just a guy, so I know there's arguments for and against both, but that's one of the frustrating things for me is I like having things in front of me. I like being able to see things as they develop and then going from there, right? Whereas if you're playing man-to-man, there's a lot of things that can happen without you even seeing it. And that is that's the frustrating part for me.
Well, the problem is they switched to a zone at one point when they kept getting gashed by the runs. They switched to a zone, and you could tell because the safeties were watching the quarterback instead of watching the man.
Yeah.
And the linebackers at the corners are running up because they're running play action, are running up to stop the run. Then all of a sudden they're out of position, and that's where you saw the 5 wide open corner routes or out routes by the Penn State receivers where nobody was within 5 yards of them because the safeties are watching the quarterback, they're watching for the run, and all of a sudden the ball's in the air, they look, oh, this guy's 5 yards in front of me, there's no way I can stop it. That was one of the more frustrating things for me, where you're getting gashed by the run over and over and over, and then, oh, hey, play action, wide open guy down the field. Like Nebraska's defense and I'm not, this isn't taking anything away from their pass defense, but like it was just frustrating to see that because of how highly touted they are in the pass defense, but you keep getting gashed by the run over and over and over and over and over, and then you're trying to stop it, and there's nothing you can do.
Here's the thing, though. I know that's how it feels. They only threw the ball 12 times.
I know. I feel like that's 12 times for 181 yards.
That's fine. I get that. But they only threw the ball 12 times, right?
Yeah.
So as frustrating as the times were when they were having those open corner routes and stuff, what beat you was the run game. Like the run game is what beat you. Like, so I have a really hard time. Like, I get that they had some wide open receivers, and you're always going to give something up. Right? That's just what it is. Like, that's how defenses work. That's how offenses work. You're always vulnerable to something. I would have rather, and I said this all week, I would have rather been like, hey, Grunkmeyer, if you can consistently make the throws, obviously you don't want to leave them that open. And I don't think in a zone you have to leave them that open.
No.
Maybe they're not as comfortable playing a zone because they've mostly been man all year. Like lots of people run zones and don't leave guys that open, right? So that
was because the guys were getting out of position because they were running up to stop the run. Like there were 4 of those passes. They showed the replay from the behind angle from behind the offense, and you see the play action just draws like 2 corners and the linebackers out of position, and all of a sudden the only people you have back are 2 deep safeties, and it's like, cool. I mean, at least they'll make the tackle.
Yeah, and I totally get that. I'm just saying, like, they only threw the ball 12 times. Like, if Nebraska was going to win this game, they had to force Grunkmeyer into probably 20 plus pass plays. Like, that was the only way Nebraska was winning this game from a defensive standpoint. So, obviously, they got beat by everything. I'm not disagreeing with you there. But there was no version of this game if they only had to throw the ball 12 times. There was no version of that game that Nebraska wins. Right? What did I say? I said 18-22, I think was the number I gave you on Friday. They weren't close to that, right? They were a full 50% off from the low end of that. So, like, I get that none of it looked good, right? And then you have to start, if none of it looks good, because I went through this with the talent disparity rankings, whether you want to do 24/7 composite, whether you want to go with our friends at Matrix Analytical. The talent differential was somewhere between 9 and 10 places. 14 and 23 was what Matrix Analytical had. 10 and 20 is what 24/7 Sports had, right? I look at that and I look at what I saw over the course of the season. I don't look at that and say, hey, Penn State was going to be 4 touchdowns better than Nebraska. So then you have to say, what else happened here? Were they not prepared? Were they not ready to come out of the bye week? That's where I have to start looking for some other answers, because when nothing looks good, even the things that Nebraska's been good at in the past, then you have to be like, okay, so what else is happening here? It's like the Minnesota game in that sense, where it's like Nebraska is, I'd have to check the rankings, but I think Nebraska was more talented than Minnesota than Penn State was to Nebraska, right? Like the differential, I think, was greater in those rankings.
Yeah, there's a greater difference from Nebraska to Minnesota than there is from Penn State to Nebraska.
Correct. So I look at that and I see, okay, nothing went right in that Minnesota game either. So I don't look at that necessarily as a schematic or football problem. Like, that's a different problem. You know what I mean? And I don't know what the answer is there. And so I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from is people, you can't point to one thing and be like, oh, well, we gave up 9 sacks. Like, that was probably the problem, right? That's a Minnesota issue, right? Gave up 9
that was
sacks.
the Minnesota problem.
Hard to argue with what happened there, right? It's harder when everything sort of goes wrong and you don't know where to start to try and contain it. Like it's like, I don't know if you've ever had like water backup in your basement or something, and you're kind of trying to put towels around it, but it's sort of coming from everywhere, and you're like, I don't know where to put the next towel to try and contain this thing.
Yeah, it's like when you're in a boat and there's like 18 holes and you don't have enough fingers and toes to reach over and cover all of the holes. So you're just sitting there like, I don't really know what to do. Like, water's going to get into this regardless, and we're going to sink.
Yeah, and then the boat sinks, and that's what, like, the boat sank today. Like we saw, that's what
and
happened.
then the wheels fall off and the boat explodes.
Why do you have wheels on your boat? I don't think that.
Because it's Nebraska. That's why. There's wheels on this boat. Don't question it.
Apparently. No, I mean, I think there's a lot of places you can start. A lot of people have brought up, hey, everything's going to look bad when you're bad on both lines. Okay, that's fair. I mean, like that's a fair place to start if you want to get more football-y into it. Go ahead.
Counterpoint. Nebraska's offensive line wasn't too bad today.
I didn't think so either. I mean, TJ had to run around a little bit and make some plays, but that is, I mean, it was nice to see sort of the dynamic that he brings to the table. Like, he brings that he brings an element when things don't go right that can get you. I mean, that's what we saw on the touchdown run, right? Is he got them out of trouble, which was an incredible run. But like, there's a lot to be said for, and I thought DB did a really good job of talking about this on the show this week. We blame the defensive line for a lot of things. And I agree. If the defensive line doesn't do their job, it's really hard for anything else to go well behind it.
Mhm.
And without rewatching this, because I haven't yet, obviously, without rewatching this, I would have a really hard time telling you whether or not it was the defensive line didn't do their job, or whether the defensive line did their job and then nobody else, like the rest of the sequence didn't follow up, right? Because I
Mhm.
think we have this idea in our head, because Nebraska's had some super dominant defensive linemen in their history,
Yep.
that you can do your job and make the play. And some guys are capable of that, but those guys get paid a lot of money on Sundays. And those guys, like, those are first round draft picks for the most
Yep.
part. You know what I mean? So I sit here and I go, okay, I don't know that Nebraska has those level of guys yet. I think some of them could be. I do know that they don't have those guys yet. What I don't know is if they did their job well enough tonight to give the people behind them a chance. That's the thing I have to go back and look at. Um,
I can tell you right
so,
now that there's gonna be about 4 or 5 of those outside runs that you are gonna be
mhm.
pissed at the defensive line because they're not setting an edge, they're diving inside, and the offensive line is pushing them to the inside, and there's absolutely nobody out there, so the running backs are just going free, clear out there. There's about 4 or 5 of those where I'm sitting there, and my wife can attest to this, I'm just yelling at the screen, "Set the damn edge, force him inside." Force him to your guys who will make the tackle. You don't have to make the play. Just do your job.
Yeah, so college football professor, who is the one that runs those matrix analytical rankings, I appreciate him joining us in the chat here tonight. He says that the talent difference wasn't insurmountable, but the places where the talent's difference was concentrated was just a really bad, big problem for Nebraska, which makes a lot of sense. If Nebraska's weak on the defensive line or wherever, and Penn State's really good on the offensive line, like, obviously that disparity is going to be is going to be really apparent, right? So
Mhm.
that makes a lot of sense in terms of the places where the talent has a disparity versus the overall talent disparity, which I think is why DB said that he thought Penn State would win this game. Again, I didn't see anybody say they would lose by 27,
No.
so I'm going to chalk it up that we're almost all wrong on that one, which is fine. Um, and again, I'll eat it. I'm the most wrong, which happens, and whatever. Like,
It is what it is.
I thought Nebraska was going to win this game. I think they were capable of winning this game. They didn't put themselves in a position to win this game. Like, that's kind of what it is. And
Do you want me to give you a stat real quick that'll piss you off a little bit more in terms of not putting yourself in a position to win the game?
sure, let's do it.
Penn State only had 9 third downs that they had to convert.
Yeah, I probably need to do more than that.
They converted on 5 of them and a 4th down on the fake punt, but not they only faced 9 third downs.
Yeah, you probably need to do more than that. Probably need to force them in more difficult positions than that.
5.9 yards per rush for Penn State.
Yeah, that's
Every
too
2
many.
runs is a first down.
Here's the part where, like, I'm having a hard time reconciling things, right? If I'm just being
Yep.
honest, I'm working through this in real time.
Yep.
Is This is the same team that lost to UCLA and Northwestern when their season was still very much in play. Like, that's one of the hardest things I'm trying to figure out here, right? Because I know people are like, oh, transitive property, whatever. But it's like, you got 3 common opponents. Like, that's not nothing, right? Like, I think that is a decent amount of information to go off of. And what I'm trying to figure out is, yes, that was a very tough loss to Oregon. Everything for them was still on the table.
Mhm.
Everything was still on the table when they lost the games to Northwestern and UCLA.
I'm
Everything
pretty
for
sure
them
they
was,
were still a top 10 team when they faced after Oregon when they faced Northwestern, they were still top 10.
yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
Or
because they
they
went from, like,
played UCLA
2
before. They played
or
for
UCLA,
UCLA
yeah.
before
So they went from
Northwestern.
2 to somewhere still in the top 10, and they lose to a UCLA team who was without their head coach.
Jay Saudi -6.5, -7.5 is exactly 2.5 or 3.5 points more wrong than -10. Just for the record, I don't know if that, like, maybe 2.5, 3.5 is way more in your world. That's fine. 2.5, 3.5 in my world, in football world, is a field goal, which is not way more. In many of the arguments I heard this week, that field goal is the reason I should have thought Penn State was good, because that field
Mhm.
goal would have changed the results of several of their games, right? So either it's a lot or it's not a lot. You tell me which. I don't care, but let's just play by the same rules all the time. Okay? That's where I'm at. Like that's the point this week for what it's worth. And I'm sure I'll address this on Monday too. But that was the point this week is let's play by the same rules all the time. Either Penn State is good and there should be 10.5-point favorites and Nebraska would be lucky to win the game. And if they did win the game, then that would have to be a great win under those rules, right?
Yes.
If that's a good team, that's 2 scores better than you according to Vegas, then winning that game has to be a good win. And on the same token, if they're 10.5 points better than you and you lose that game, you can't really be that upset about it because they're obviously that much better than you, right? But
yeah, like
we're
it can't
seeing
count
in
as
the chat,
a bad loss.
Yeah, like it cannot be both of those things. So that was the point this week. I know some people missed it. That's fine. But the point is how we process the information and move it based on our feelings. And that to me was the frustrating part. Did I think the line was wrong by 2.5, 3.5 points? Yes, I did. But the greater point was we were going to, yes, I agree, Josh. It would have been a great win. And I thought they were going to get the great win. I did.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the road at Penn State as a 10.5 to now 7.5 point dog where it closed, I think it would have been a great win. But I also thought that UCLA was a great win going on the road as an underdog and winning that game. And the minute that game went final, we started discounting what UCLA is. And that's fine. UCLA is what they are this year. They're about to play Washington. Maybe they'll have a big game against Washington because they've got 18,000 people out in this game, the Huskies do. But my point is either Penn State should have been 10.5 point favorites, and then this result should not be that surprising to you, or I was right and Nebraska should have expected to win this game. Both of those things cannot be true in the same time. And that's fine. Like whichever one you pick, I'm cool with, but let's all operate with the same information and under the same rules the whole time. Is that fair? Is that a fair request?
I'm good with that.
Because
makes sense to me.
That's all I'm asking. Like, if you think rules should be fired, fine. I'm not going to try and change your opinion. And
I think you're dumb.
It can't. Yeah, I disagree.
I think you're dumb if you're calling for rules job.
And maybe say RB. I don't know. There's lots of letters after that. So it kind of feels like a bot. But he says maybe Nebraska is just bad. Maybe. But they've got some good wins. They've got some better wins than Penn State does. So is Nebraska bad, or is Penn State bad? Or is Nebraska bad and Penn State's a little bit better, but they have a worse record? Like, that's what I'm trying to find out.
Maybe Penn State just had all the juice today, considering it was senior. Did you know it was senior night, by the way? I don't know if you could hear from the broadcast that it was senior night.
Yeah, they did mention that a couple times. They mentioned that a couple times.
Couple rushing records getting broken.
Yeah, that's totally, I mean, good for them. Like, that's fine. And listen, you go for a fake punt up 20, like that's fine. You earn that right. If you want to rub it in, you earn that right. Like, I don't love it, but it is what it is. You want to listen. And if I'll be honest, if I'm Penn State and I've lost a bunch of close games, then maybe I am like, yeah, I need to make sure I put this thing away. Like,
yeah, I'm trying. If I'm Penn State, I'm trying to run the score up. I'm trying to redo the deficit between the wins and the losses in terms of points for and points against. Like, if everything is going right for me and it's senior night and I have a running back who is a few yards away from getting the all-time leading rushing record, and I have a running back who's 3 rushing touchdowns from setting the all-time rushing touchdowns record, like, you better believe I'm doing everything in my power to get both of those records tonight. And that's exactly what Penn State was trying to do. And I don't blame them. Everything was going right. Nebraska could not stop you on the ground, could not stop your 11 completions, your 11 passes. So if I'm Penn State and I'm the interim head coach and I've got the entire crowd cheering my name, yeah, you better believe I'm going for it on 4th down. I'm doing everything in my power to show Penn State, like, I want this job. I deserve this job. That's pretty much what this was.
Yeah, I get that. And I also listen, if I had lost a bunch of close games, I would try and put the thing as far out of reach as humanly possible. I get it. Like, I'm not mad about it. I did think the broadcast was a little bit funny when they're like, oh, he would never do anything to embarrass his old friend. I was like, I kind of did a little bit, but that's fine. You know,
I don't know about that.
You sure about that? But like, I understand it. And listen, when you're in Nebraska and you don't stop it, you put yourself in that position. I totally understand that. Like, I don't have a problem. I didn't love how the game played out early, just in terms of the chippiness of it. Like, it felt like, I felt like Nebraska was getting bullied. So that's a problem to start with, right? Nebraska has to figure out a way. And listen, I appreciate that. I don't think Nebraska plays cheap or dirty. But they have to find a way to fight back when they're getting bullied, and not
Let your enforcer be an
without,
enforcer.
you know what I
The
mean?
amount of times that Elijah Pritchett is, and I understand you don't want penalties, you don't want the 15 yards, but the amount of times that Elijah Pritchett is getting pulled away by like two of his teammates when he's just in the face of one of the Penn State players, like, let your enforcer be an enforcer. You're getting pushed around right now. Let him do, like, obviously not get a 15-yard personal foul penalty, but let him get in somebody's face. Get in somebody's face yourself. Like you said, they were getting bullied early. They weren't doing anything. There was no physicality. There was no juice. And Penn State came
Yeah, they were
out,
getting bullied.
punched you in the mouth. And Nebraska was like, damn, that hurt. I hope they don't do it again. And
Yeah,
then they
yeah. They're
did.
just like, please don't hit me again. And then they got bullied a little bit, or a lot of bit. I didn't love how that started. That was not. I mean, that's a bad way to set the tone for a game, obviously, right? And then there's just a lot going on there that Nebraska never really allowed itself to get back in the game. Nikki Asher, the Huskers have taken the points on the first drive. I mean, I don't think it would have ended up mattering, knowing how the game played out. Like, it's hard to kind of rewind that and go back and say, hey, I don't know that changes the course of the game. You know what I mean? There's some, I think Michigan was one where the similar thing happened, right? Where they had the ball inside the 5, didn't get any points, they went for it, whatever. I have like in Michigan, you can make the argument that the 3 extra points obviously matter a lot because they lost by 3, right? Not sure you can make the argument against Penn State. Maybe it changes the tone a little bit, but I'm not sure taking the field goal there helps Nebraska stop the run in the first half. So,
I mean, you've got
like,
them backed up on the 2. Like, I understand that Nebraska's rush defense isn't. You have them backed up on the 2. You're feeling pretty confident in your defense at this point. Well, I mean, it's the beginning of the game, but like, first off, you think you're going to score. You have all the confidence in the world that you can score from the 2-yard line. They haven't been able to, like, all season, been able to get that short yardage, which is very annoying. But you don't get it. Okay, your defense has them backed up on the 2. Surely they're not going to go 98 yards and score a touchdown, but that's exactly what they did. You thought you could at least hold them to a punt. Unfortunately, Katron Allen breaks one and damn near scores a touchdown on a long run, and then they end up scoring the touchdown. But in terms of like the coaching analysis, the 3 points in that situation, I understand that it's been multiple games that Nebraska has had that exact situation play out, not the touchdown, but the exact situation of being in the red zone, being inside the 5 and not scoring. But you've, for the most part, held teams to at least punting on those drives following that mistake. So taking those 3 points, I don't think really would have mattered. Getting the touchdown would have been huge for getting some type of juice on the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger question here is, why isn't Nebraska better in those short yardage situations? Like, that's the real question. Like, Nebraska has found themselves in a lot of these short yardage situations, whether it's 4th and 1s, whether it's the 4th and goals close down to the goal line there. And they've been pretty bad at them all year. Like, I haven't loved their play calling or their execution all year long, right? So, like, if you want to have that conversation, I'm open to that. Maybe a touchdown there does change things a little bit. Maybe it changes the tone of the game. I don't think 3 as opposed to pinning them back on the 2 really does. My personal opinion. I do think there is a worthy conversation to say, hey, why can't Nebraska be better in those short yardage situations? Like, if that's I agree. I don't love that they put Heiner Carberg in the situation in all those times either. Like, it drives me
Every
crazy.
time. Every time.
Everybody knows what you're going to do. So you're taking away any opportunity to surprise them at all. And he doesn't look comfortable doing it. Some guys have a like some guys have a sense for sort of the timing, and like I think there's a little bit of an art to those short yardage, finding the crease and getting through there. It doesn't
Mhm.
seem like Heinrich Harburg has that feel at all. Like it
He's too
really
high
doesn't.
when he does it.
So
He gets too high.
yeah,
He gets pushed back.
he doesn't like find like I don't like putting Heinrich Harburg in there. And so I would agree that that's a problem in the short yardage packages. It almost feels like they feel like they have to get Heinrich Harburg in the game at some point. And so that's where they think it would be most useful.
Mhm.
So like if that's the argument you want to make, you know, say, hey, we know we're bad at short yardage. Let's kick the field goal here. I'm open to that. In this particular game, I don't think it changes anything.
No.
You know what I mean? Like I don't think this game, I don't think there was one play at any point that changes this outcome for Nebraska. That would be, this was a tonal kind of failure for Nebraska. They
Do
were
you
not able
okay.
to match the tone of Penn State or the physicality of Penn State in order to be in this game.
Do you think, and this will be a question for you, and I don't know, maybe the chat as well. Do you think that that Penn State drive after Nebraska didn't score the touchdown, didn't get the points on their first drive, if they would have held them and forced them to punt, and obviously, you know, the game is the game, the final is the final, do you think that would have given Nebraska any type of momentum? Obviously, I'm not going to say it changes the whole game and Nebraska ends up winning, but like, would that have given
Sure.
them something to work with?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think getting a stop early, which typically, even in the games Nebraska has lost or struggled with, they have gotten stops early, typically, right?
Mhm.
First couple drives of the game, they've been able to get stops. So I do think Penn State's ability to score right away from that position does change the momentum quite a bit. I don't know if it changes the outcome, right? I think Penn State was more ready to go, more physical, and I think Nebraska, with the mindset they had and kind of the way they were coming into this game, was going to have a hard time stopping the run. I think with the way that Penn State's offensive line was playing, Nebraska was going to have a hard time stopping the run. So
Mhm.
it is demoralizing. I don't know if it would have changed the outcome. What I will say is it came closer to changing the outcome against Michigan when almost that exact same thing played out. Nebraska gets stopped inside the 5. Nebraska stops Michigan from that position. They come back, they get an opportunity. They miss the field goal, but it didn't snowball on them right away, right? It didn't snowball on them right away the way it did with Penn
Mhm.
State. This thing, Penn State got on top of it in a hurry. And then the other thing that Nebraska didn't get here that they did get against Michigan was they got a turnover in one of those situations that helped them a ton to turn the tide of the game.
Yep.
Nebraska needed, and it seemed like they might get it on special teams with some of those returns. You know,
He was
like
close. Ja'Cory was close.
it seemed like there
Mackay
was
made a mistake, but
yeah, that was not a good decision. It seemed like there were a couple opportunities to do it on special teams where I thought, okay, if they're able to make a big game breaking play on special teams, that could almost be the equivalent of a turnover. But I think they were going to be have a hard time if they didn't find a way to steal a possession or steal some points somewhere. Like the way this game was going early, you almost needed something like that to try and flip it back. And that never happened, right? They weren't able to break it on special teams um in a way that would change the game. They weren't able to get a turnover that changed the game the way it kind of did against Michigan there. They didn't have that. Obviously, the Hail Mary against Michigan was a huge play
mhm.
in terms of like that felt like stealing a possession, right?
Yeah.
Felt the same as almost like a big turnover in your favor or big special teams play. That Hail Mary felt like stealing a possession because it really kind of was.
Mhm.
Nebraska didn't get any of those, and the way that this game was going, they were going to have to, right? That was a thing that was going to have to happen, and it never did. So you kind of add all those things up, and that's that's where you get what happened tonight. Is it ends up getting away from you. You're never really able to put a tourniquet on the bleeding, and you bleed out and you lose by 4 touchdowns. Like that's what it is. There was also absolutely no scenario in which Nebraska was going to win a game that they had to have TJ Lateef throw it 37 times. Like just like there was no scenario where they were going to win a game where Grunkmeyer only threw it 12 times. There were 0% chance. And I mean, I don't even remember what I thought that I said the number was. I think it was about the same. But DB put it pretty well. He goes, "Hey, whoever has the most rush attempts is going to win this game." That's pretty simple and pretty
It's,
dead on,
yeah.
right?
He said rush attempts and whoever turns the ball over less. Neither team turned the ball over, so it went to rush attempts, and Penn State blew you out of the water with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there is no scenario in which you can throw the ball 37 times with TJ Lateef in this game and win. That wasn't a thing. Like that was not going to be a thing.
They actually
I
did. So
was
Penn State had 39 rush attempts. Nebraska had 32. But again, Penn State averaged 5.9 on the ground to the tune of 231 rushing yards, whereas Nebraska was averaging 4.1 and only had 131 rushing yards.
Yeah, I was gonna try and see if I could get. I don't know if PFF has the numbers up yet, just to get the drop back attempts
Mm-hmm.
for Grunkmeyer. I don't think it
It was
was hugely different.
yeah. And it was also, I
I
know that you're saying he only attempted 12, he only completed 11, but his yards per pass, do you want to take a guess what his yards per pass was?
Well, I mean, it's gonna be like 15, right? Because he was 12 attempts and 180 yards, so like 15, something like that.
15.1.
Yeah, so like that's obviously like that's gonna kill. They didn't
It's
defend
gonna crush you.
anything. They
No.
didn't defend anything well tonight. Like I
Like
want to
if we
make
want
that
to
clear.
focus like if we want to focus on one side of the ball, if you want to stick on the defensive side of the ball, like it was just bad. It was just a very bad showing by the defense, rush defense, pass defense, at everything, tackling, everything in between for Nebraska's defense was just bad.
Yeah, there was really no redeeming factor on the defense, and that's why when you're saying like, hey, they were giving up all these wide open when they switched to the zone. I get that, right? I do. Um, you have to That's where I bring in the execution, right? Like you have to execute it at a higher level than that, regardless of what you're running. And it was they gave up. This is why it ended up being a 4 touchdown game instead of a 1 score game like some of the other ones we've seen. Is
Mhm.
Nebraska's gotten gashed on the ground in other games. They gave up nothing in the air basically those games, right? Like almost
Yep.
nothing at all. And so they were able to stay in it and have it be a 1 score game. If you're getting gashed for 15 attempt on the air and you're going to give up the rushing yards that they did, like yeah, there's no path forward to victory there. There's just not,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, that's why I kind of have to put it. I mean, maybe I don't know. Without rewatching it, I don't know if I can sit here and tell you definitively that Penn State just didn't out scheme them all the way around. Maybe they did. But that's why I lean on it being an execution thing. We've seen this team execute at a much higher level than this against, I mean, USC is a better offense than Penn State. I don't
Mhm.
think that's a hot take. USC is a better offense than Penn State. They have better skill position players. Their running backs are probably slight edge to Penn State, but not a huge edge. Like USC has really good running backs, and quarterback edge is dramatic to USC over Penn State. Now, Penn State has a much better offensive line, so that matters a lot here too. But overall, USC has a much better offense than Penn State does. So I know what this team is capable of against really high level offenses. Stylistically, maybe that's part of the problem. But I also think you just have to look at it and be like, hey, Nebraska didn't look like they were ready to execute at this level. They didn't look like they were ready to execute in this situation. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the travel. I don't know if it's because State College sucks. And this is a tangent. I I don't know Terry Smith. He seems like a nice man. Matt Rule seems to like him. That's fine. Can I just say the Joe 409 buttons are weird to me?
I
Like
Are those
there's
new
a
or did they just
so that particular button I think was new for Terry Smith. He's been wearing it, I believe. They've done some 409 logos basically since like 2015 off and on.
Mhm.
But can I just say like there's a reason he had a bunch of those wins vacated? And it's that he covered up a giant child sex abuse scandal within his football program. Like, it feels weird to kind of advocate for that guy. I don't know. That's just has nothing to do with the football game. But like every time they showed Terry Smith, I was like, that makes me feel really gross just to watch. I don't know. That felt weird for me. I don't just felt like I had to say it. That was a very
I
strange.
honestly
That was very strange for me. Just every time they showed him, like, is that what I think it is? And then I Googled it. It's like, yep, he's, why the wins got vacated, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't, it's not like he was, like Kelvin Sampson got fired from Indiana because he was texting people too much. If you want to write like, like justice for Kelvin Sampson or something on an Indiana button, like okay, sure. But like child sex abuse scandal is kind
it's
of
different.
one of those like, yeah, maybe we vacate those wins and we don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It took me way too long to figure out what the button said. Like
I Googled it.
every time they'd show
I
them, I'd
Googled it.
see it. No, I mean like I didn't understand. I was like, what is J? I was like, who's JE? Like whose initials are those? And I was like, 4O. I was like, that was like my brain was not like I was pissed. I was just pissed the entire game, and my brain wasn't working. But I'm looking at Terry Smith, and he's just like okay. This is when I knew Nebraska was in trouble. The very beginning of the game when they're showing both coaches and Matt Rule's jumping around with his players, he's just getting hype, and Terry Smith is just like this,
like dead-eyed.
He's just staring at the field with no emotion whatsoever. I was like, I don't like this at all. like this is senior night. Everybody's excited, and your interim head coach is just like, I'm going to destroy you. Like that was the look on his face, and that's exactly what happened. Nebraska was out physical in every.
J-Dub, they did get vacated, then they got reinstated, and there was still a giant sex abuse scandal cover-up. So I don't know what sour grapes is, but maybe, I don't know. I feel weird having a guy's name on a button on my shirt if I don't know if that was the case. Just me.
He was his coach.
That's fine. I'd maybe try and distance myself a little bit if that was a thing that happened under my coach's watch. I'm
not going to disagree with you.
If that happened here with Nebraska under TO, I'd be like, see you, bud. I'm good. No, thank you. Just me. I don't know. Unrelated. It's just every time. It was pretty prominent on a shirt every time they showed him. So it was just a thing.
It was a pretty big button.
It was a pretty big button. It was a very visible button, but hey, maybe that's something they're over there. I think other people maybe aren't.
But so Nebraska's defense got gashed.
Sorry, it just
no, I know you your thing. You were talking about how it was strange how Nebraska didn't show up for this game. It seemed like, and what makes it worse is that you had a bye week in between. Like you had 2 weeks to get yourself prepared for this Penn State team that you got to watch last week play against a Michigan State team that you already beat, that you know their schemes, you know everything. So you know what they're trying to do against this Penn State squad. So you're watching that. I'm taking, if you're a coaching staff, your players, you're watching that. You see what Michigan State is able to have, what little success they did have against Penn State last week, and whatever Penn State was able to do against Michigan State, which was run the ball, 30 times and pass it 10 times, whatever that number was.
I think it was Michigan 50 State and 10, but
yeah, something like that. And then they did the same thing to you practically. They didn't have the 50 rushes, but they did the same thing. So you had 2 weeks to prepare. You watched them do what they were going to do against you because you have a terrible rush defense. You watched it happen. You had another week to prepare for it. And this is still the product you put on the field. And that's where I think most of, if not all of the fans are the most upset about. And what I'm extremely upset about is that you had the time to prepare for this, and you still look, they're trying to get better too, right? And this is something that I have every beginning of the year when people talk schedules and like, oh, well, this team, Nebraska, is going to beat this team. Other teams are trying to get better too, right? Penn State was trying to get better. After they beat Michigan State, they had a week to prepare for you, and they got to watch. They watched film on you. They watched your defense. They watched your offense. They saw your defense. They said, we can run on them. Nebraska, you had 2 weeks to fix that, and you didn't. You had 2 weeks to do whatever the hell you had to do on the defensive line with the linebackers, with the secondary, to stop Penn State from gaining, 200 plus rushing yards on you, to stop Katron Allen from becoming Penn State's all-time leading rusher because he needed 140 some yards to get that. You had 2 weeks to get ready for that, and you still let it happen. And that's the most frustrating part, is not only did you let it happen, but at a certain point, it seemed like screw it. It seemed like you just kind of laid down and let it happen. You just let them run all over you. You're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a really good point about the bye week. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the frustrations aren't completely warranted, right? I'm sure that the coaches would tell you the same thing. I don't make the immediate leap from frustration to firing people.
Oh no, I'm not saying that.
Like I don't I just there's some people in the chat that are, which is that's their right.
It
But
happens after every loss. Like the
so
Nebraska lost to USC, and people are like fire Rule, man.
that's
It's
kind of the
dumb.
thing is I'm sure everything will get reevaluated. I mean, Rule's not getting fired, but I'm sure the coaching staff will be evaluated at the end of the season, and it'll be whatever decisions are made will be made. But I I understand the frustration that burrs that type of sentiment, right? Especially
Mhm.
coming off the bye week like you're talking about. I understand looking at it and saying, "Hey, you had 2 weeks to prepare for this team. You knew they wanted to be physical, right? You knew they wanted to you knew that they were gonna want to run the ball like 80% of the time, basically. Like that's pretty close to the ratio. That's pretty close to the ratio that um that's pretty close to the ratio that they had against Michigan State. That's pretty close to the
Mhm.
ratio that they had today against Nebraska. So you had a pretty good idea what they were going to do. You had a pretty good idea about how they wanted to do it. You knew what their personnel was going to be, and to not have a better, to either not have a better game plan in place or not have your players in a better spot to execute that game plan is incredibly frustrating. Like 100%, not going to argue with that at any point. That is a fact. Somebody also brought up it is worth mentioning that the two worst performances of the year came off of bye weeks, or two of their worst performances of the. I don't. Was Minnesota a bye week?
Let me
Minnesota
check.
wasn't a bye week, was it? I thought Michigan State was the other bye. Michigan to Michigan State was the other bye week.
Let me check.
Am I misremembering that? Yeah, check for me because this obviously um awful performance off a bye week, and the bye week does make it worse. I totally understand that, but I
Yeah,
don't.
Minnesota wasn't a bye week. It was the Michigan to Michigan State was a bye week. You're right.
Okay, and I thought they played. I thought they played well against Michigan State, and they obviously
Yeah,
they won that game. So, um, but so like that
Minnesota was a
comment.
short week.
Okay, yeah, that was the short
Minnesota
week, and
was
that.
because it was the Maryland. You were at Maryland, then you had to come back,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
then you went up to Minnesota on a Friday
and
or played on a Friday. So
that was the distraction week. That was
yeah,
the Penn
that was
State.
James Franklin got fired week.
Yeah, so that was the other issue there. But it's to me, it's about more than and somebody, I think it was Saudi, said, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Saaty. I'm just going to call it Saudi. I don't know how to say it. Um, he said you can't work on physicality in 2 weeks. You can't work on you can't work on someone's physical stature in 2 weeks. I think physicality is more about a mindset. It's about toughness, right? Like that is um that's a thing I think you can work on, because I do think it fluctuates from week to week. I feel like we've seen it fluctuate from week to week.
Mhm.
So if it can fluctuate from week to week, I think you can work on it over the course of 2 weeks, right? So I think that's the part that's hard to come to terms with, is why they were not mentally prepared to match physicality, right? They weren't mentally prepared for the fight that Minnesota wanted to bring. They weren't mentally prepared for the fight that Penn State wanted to bring. Now, I
Mhm.
think it was for different reasons, right? I don't know that Penn State had the animosity for Nebraska that Minnesota does, or that Iowa will,
Mhm.
but they had that mentality and that level of physicality for maybe according to the broadcast, every player on that team wants Terry Smith to be their head coach. Okay. Like
Mhm.
maybe that's why they're playing that physical. Maybe they do
I
care
said
about playing.
the crowd and the team were chanting his name during that fourth quarter.
The
Like
crowd, which
they
was half
want him.
empty, by the way.
Yes,
I don't know if you
it was not full.
like it was there literally was not a student section.
Which makes it even more frustrating because you know how I think you guys talked to Sam on Monday, and he talked about how TJ is going to have to deal with a real road environment. That wasn't even a real road environment.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably more so than anywhere this side of Minnesota.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head what the split on Minnesota was, but that felt like a real road game. Um, but I didn't think the crowd was really a factor here. I thought it was all about Penn State. I mean, legitimately. I think that it was about what Penn State did and what Nebraska either wasn't willing or able to do in that circumstance. So there really is no answer to say, well, hey, if they fix this, this, and this. I think it is I do think it's a mental and physical toughness thing. And I think a lot of that is you have to make some choices about who's playing in terms of personnel. And that might not be the same every week, which I think is the challenging part here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you have to be willing to, and to their credit, it seems like they have run through a bunch of different guys trying to find that. I don't know if that helps or hurts at a certain point, but I think you have to be prepared for Iowa this week to try and match physicality, at least mentally, in a way that they weren't prepared to off the bye week this week.
Mm-hmm. Iowa
And
is going to try to do exactly what Penn State did to you today, and that is punch you in the mouth and run through your face mask. And if you're going to tell me that you have experienced that now twice, and you're going to go home and you're going to face an Iowa team where you know exactly what they're going to try to do, and you're going to put up, again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you put up the same performance as today, like that's a problem.
absolutely, it's a problem. I will say, if we want to use the talent thing, Iowa's talent level to execute the things that Penn State does
Mm-hmm.
is not at the same level, right? We brought it up
Yeah.
with Minnesota earlier, and that's not to say, like, obviously, we brought it up with Minnesota earlier. It could go the Minnesota way too, right? If Nebraska's not ready, and again, it's a short week, so like that should be a concern,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you're going on the talent thing, which was brought up a lot with Penn State, again, the talent gap between Penn State and Nebraska is smaller than the talent gap between Nebraska and Iowa. Now, to CFB Professor's point, it might be concentrated in some places that make it a tough day for Nebraska. But an overall talent, it shouldn't be an issue against Iowa, the way it shouldn't have been an issue against Minnesota. Again, we saw how it went against Minnesota, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could very easily go that way against Iowa. I also think Nebraska could come out. I think they could beat Iowa. I do. I think there's not been a single game this year, and maybe I'm nuts. I don't know.
I mean, you are.
I'm sure certain people think so. There hasn't been a single game this year that I didn't think Nebraska was capable of winning. Obviously, the results in Minnesota and Penn State, especially Penn State more than any, right? And because I'll stick by my eval on Minnesota. I think their results since then have backed that up.
They just lost to Northwestern.
Yeah, Minnesota, I think, is pretty mid. That's a game Nebraska 100%, if they're locked in, ready to go, can win that game, right? The difference is I don't think Nebraska was incapable of winning any game this season.
Mm-hmm.
And like I genuinely believe that. And I don't think they're incapable of beating Iowa. But Iowa is also very capable of beating them. I'm going to watch a couple more Iowa games this weekend to see kind of how I feel about how they've played recently.
It's the same Iowa team that you've been watching the last 2 years. The only thing is their quarterback runs better. He's not looking to pass. He runs better, but it's the same defensively off. It's the same Iowa team that we've been watching the last 5 years. It's just that Gronowski is trying to run through somebody's face.
Better run, much better.
And every once in a while, he'll chuck the ball deep. That's it.
And so that is, but I want to rewatch before I kind of come to a conclusion. But I already know from watching them earlier this year that I don't think this is a team that Nebraska is incapable of beating, but Nebraska is going to have to do something that they haven't done a great job of this year, and that is be mentally prepared to match physicality.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something Nebraska is going to have to figure out on a short week, and maybe getting punched in the face against Penn State helps them find that. I don't know. I really don't, but
I don't know. It's frustrating.
Sometimes it does. Sometimes that helps people. But like I feel like it kind of helped Nebraska last year in the Indiana game, and they came back and played really well against Ohio State. Josh
I
says,
mean,
I don't know if
you
you can,
get punched in the mouth against Minnesota, you come back, you play well against Michigan State.
yeah, or not Michigan State,
Or not Michigan State.
Northwestern.
Yeah, Northwestern.
Northwestern.
Another physical team.
I don't know if you can bring up Josh Weiss's comment
Yep.
from. So I actually agree here, Josh. I know we don't agree often, but I agree here. You want a tough physical team, you have to recruit tough physical players. I agree that that's a thing that's hard to change in people. I don't know if those guys exist on the current roster or not. I feel like I've seen them play tougher than they did today. I don't think that's a stretch. It'd be hard not to play tougher than they did today. So, but I don't know the constitution, and without actually having like relationships with a lot of these guys, it's hard to know, right? That's where the relationship building and the recruiting process means more than the NIL, I think, because you have to find the right guys, right? You have to find the right guys to find that are the toughness. That's why guys like Ja'Cory Barney gets brought up all the time, right? I've brought it up over and over again. I think he's one of the toughest guys on the team, pound for pound. Maybe the toughest guy on the team, pound for pound. Emmett Johnson, hell of a tough kid.
Yep.
Like, he just gets battered and tough kid. I think there's
like he knows he's going to get beat up. He's getting flipped upside down and tossed around, and he's still eating hits like it's nothing and carrying the ball and trying to get all those tough yards. And he knows he's going to get beat up. And that was one of the things today is Penn State knew Nebraska's trying to feed Emmett. We're going to stop the run. Penn State did what you wanted Nebraska to do to Penn State. They stuffed the run and they forced the freshman quarterback to try and beat them. And
yeah, absolutely. They did the thing that I wanted them to do to Minnesota or to Michigan, and they did the thing that I wanted them to do today against Penn State. Now, to your point, when they tried to do that to a certain extent against Penn State today, Penn State exposed them enough that they felt like they couldn't do that anymore. Right? Even with the 12 pass attempts, they exploited them enough in the 12 pass attempts that Nebraska felt like they couldn't continue to do that. Okay, that's fair. Penn State played way better than Nebraska in every facet of the game. I also think Iowa probably not capable. Like, Iowa might be more capable of running the ball against Nebraska, although even if their offensive line's better, I don't think their running backs are better, so that does matter. I don't think
Iowa's offensive line is better than Penn State's. I know that somebody said that in the comments. Penn State's offensive line was and I think still is, well, not to the level of winning the award, but was touted as one of the best offensive lines in the Big Ten. And I still think that they are one of the best offensive lines in the Big Ten. They just bad year.
Yeah, and that was brought up before in the broadcast, like before the season. They were kind of in consideration for the Joe Moore Award and things like that. So I honestly don't know. I could look up some stats and some things like that and get a better idea. But even if that's true, the running backs at Penn State are dramatically better, and that is a pretty critical part of the running game here. And again, Nebraska has gotten gashed in the run. Yeah, I agree, Traven. Penn State has elite running backs. I would agree there. Singleton and Katron Allen are really, really good. I don't think Iowa's running backs are near to that level. So maybe even if their offensive lines are a wash, that's going to be a issue that they can't execute it at the same level, even with similar line play. So that, I think, is a big issue for Iowa next week. But the other issue is if Nebraska can keep Gronowski, who, if they can't keep Gronowski from doing this, there's a real problem because Gronowski has not thrown the ball well basically against anybody all year. If they let Gronowski look like Grunkmeyer did today, then yeah, there's probably not a path forward for them to win. Like, there's probably not a path forward for Nebraska to win the game if that happens again. There is a path forward for Nebraska to win the game because we've seen it multiple times this year that they could give up a certain amount of rushing yards, and if the other team isn't able to pass it at all, then Nebraska still has a path to victory, right? That, I think, is a lot more likely against Iowa, not just because Gronowski, I think, is one of the worst passers in the Big Ten. I don't think that's a hot take. I am worried about his running, Traven. That's fair.
Do you want Gronowski's passing stats?
I do. I don't have them off the top of my head.
He's completed 64% of his passes. He's only attempted 202 passes. for 1,216 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 5 picks.
Yeah, so not great, and it's looked pretty bad at times for real.
He's only been sacked 13 times though.
He's pretty mobile. Yeah, like he's going to get out of
Yeah.
a lot of those sacks, which is the
He
part
gets
that would
yeah,
concern you.
96 carries for 370 yards and 13 touchdowns for him. He is
Yeah,
he has the next closest in terms of touchdowns for Iowa has 3.
yeah, that's going to be a problem because I would argue that's the part of Nebraska's run defense that they're worse at is the QB run game, and particularly the unscripted QB run game. I don't know how many times they are going to drop back and pass. Traven asked about Iowa special teams. I mean, I'm worried about Weechin. Is that how you say his name?
What I think it's Wetchin? I don't know how to say it.
I think it's
And I feel
pronounced
bad.
Weechin.
Weechin?
He's a
Caden?
monster. Yeah, he's a monster. He won the Jet Award last year.
Yeah.
He's a problem. You really got to
5'9",
hope.
196 pounds from Williamsburg, Iowa, a senior wide receiver.
I've been to Williamsburg. They've got some outlets out there. Yeah, I believe it's Weechin. He's a monster. So like obviously you don't want that guy to touch the ball at all.
Goodness gracious. I'm looking at
Outside
their
of
receiver stats now.
Oh, it's gotta be bad, huh?
He is their leading receiver with 20 receptions. 20.
For how many yards? Like 350?
151. Jay Gill leads them in reception yards with 237, but no touchdowns.
That's hard to do. Yeah, so I mean the Iowa game is going to be even though people are going to look at the physicality of Penn State and the physicality of Iowa and think that those are going to be corollary, I think we're looking at a very different type of game plan for even though like the run pass ratios might be the same. I think we're looking at a very different type of game for Iowa. And again, a game Iowa can win, but I also don't think it's a game Nebraska's incapable of winning. Like it's 2 7-4 teams. It's in Lincoln. I don't like
it's senior night.
Senior night, which I don't know if you know that was senior night in Penn State tonight. Like it was. I also think like if Nebraska wins this Iowa game, this is the season a lot of people thought they were going to have.
4 losses, 3 losses.
Yeah, 3-4 losses. I mean, it would be 4 or it'd be 4, right? If they beat Iowa, but like most people, not named me, had it as a 9-3 or 8-4 team. So like you're really right in the neighborhood. I thought that an 8-win team was the number you needed to get to say, hey, this is significant progress from last year, right? A 2-win improvement over last year's team looked like significant progress to me. And I wasn't counting on a Dylan Raiola injury to miss 4 games or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of it too. 3.5 games, I guess. So that's part of it as well. But if you would like, I believe it's on the podcast from earlier in the year where I said, hey, 8 wins is the number you need to get to show significant progress. That's still very much on the table. That is, and I think that, like I said, there's not a single game this year, and Iowa's not any different, that I didn't think Nebraska was capable of winning. Obviously, they have lost 4 of those, which sucks, but I didn't think they were incapable of winning any of those. Just didn't, And ironically enough, before the season, like in the week of, I didn't think they were incapable of winning losing any of those games. But ironically enough, the one game before the season that I thought they were incapable of winning was Penn State.
Yeah, I think the Penn State game was the one that everybody like. I don't care if people said like, "Oh, Nebraska's going to go undefeated." In their mind, everybody chalked the Penn State game up as a loss. So regardless, like everybody had one loss in their mind for Nebraska at least, and it was the Penn State game. And unfortunately, Penn State ended up having a bad season. I mean, you still lost to Penn State though.
Yeah, they lost to. I will be interested to see what it looks like on a short week against Iowa.
Can I say that the offense, they got bullied as well, and Emmett wasn't able to uh, eat the way that we probably thought he was going to after that long run, like the
I mean,
first drive of the game. I
cer-
was like, oh, this is going to be just a money game for Emmett.
certainly the way he needed to in order for Nebraska to win this game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the offense for Nebraska, I thought showed some flashes of like, hey, this can be something. And I thought that throughout the game that if they were to keep improving on those things, like TJ was slinging the ball, and I thought that he was on point with a couple of those. There were some, mistimed drops, and we talked about it earlier in the season, or not early in the season, but when he first had to start, that he's got an arm. He's going to overthrow some balls, and that's what happened. But I thought that the offense with TJ looked, again, they got bullied, but I thought that there were flashes of like, hey, this looks pretty good.
I mean, they obviously moved the ball quite a bit for long stretches of that game, right? Like it didn't result in enough points, and at a certain point, I think very early in the second half, they started going for it in the pretty deep into Penn State territory because 3 points just didn't do you any good whatsoever.
At all.
But I like they moved the ball a decent amount. Obviously it wasn't enough, but Emmett still went for over 100. Now half of that came on one run, and I understand that, but the like there were times where the offense looked like they had a little bit of a rhythm, and then as I mentioned earlier, the dynamic that TJ brings when things break down a little bit, and his ability to kind of spin out of things, and like on the touchdown run and give them an opportunity to make something out of nothing, I do think is really interesting wrinkle to this offense. But to your point, like there was, and I think it was a really stark reminder that even though we get frustrated with Dylan sometimes of some of the things that he's pretty good at, there were some throws that TJ's just got to make that he didn't, and they weren't particularly close. The one that was almost an interception, that he scrambled into a open throw to Ja'Cory Barney, and he just didn't miss. He just missed it, right? Like he just didn't get there,
It just
and
wasn't there.
yeah, it just wasn't there.
That throw where he almost dropped it to Lindenmeyer in the end zone, where he put it in like the right spot, but I don't think Lindenmeyer thought he was going to put it further into the back of the end zone because he started fading to the sideline.
Yeah.
And so he had to like kind of readjust and like dive, and it goes off his fingertips. Like that was a really good throw, but at the same time, like I'm not going to say that Dylan completes that throw, but that's a throw that Dylan has made.
And that's part of the I think that's partly a chemistry thing too, where like Lindenmeyer probably has a better sense of where Dylan's going to throw that ball. I think it was the play right before that where
the drop in the bucket to Emmett.
Yeah, like on his knees.
Yeah.
Where he like overthrew it just a little bit. Like that was not the completion not that one. There was this was in the second quarter, kind of down by the goal line.
Where Emmett fell like in front of the end zone.
Yeah, like at the
was
1
he
yard
throwing
line?
that to Emmett, or was he throwing that? Was it Dane in the back of the end zone?
I thought he was throwing it to Emmett, but Emmett fell, and so he wasn't. It's like there's just little things like that.
Yeah.
That I think timing, I think chemistry. The more he plays with these guys, the better it's going to get. But like the Lindenmeyer is a great example where that feels like one where he probably has a better feel of where Dylan's going to put that ball. It feels like Sadi says, is it me or when 44 makes big plays, NU tends to win? Yeah, he's had pretty big roles in several of Nebraska's wins this year. I think I'd love to see him get involved in the offense a little bit more. But he
just always finds himself in the right place at the right time for a big play.
And he's great with the ball in his hands after he catches. Like he's not a guy that's fun to tackle.
No, like he's not fast. He's not going to outrun anybody, but like, man, like he's going to he gets low when he lowers his shoulder too. Like he's a pretty big guy, but he gets low. So you're going to tackle him, and it's like you're going to get hit by his shoulder, and you're trying to get him in his ankles. Like I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, like it's punishing, right? So yeah, I would love to see, and that kind of goes to I think a little bit larger point where This was a little bit of a frustration for me last year. It's been off and on this year where that intermediate passing game feels like it should be there with the type of guys that Nebraska has, whether it's a Lindenmeyer, whether it was Fedoni last year, whether it was some of the bigger bodied receivers like Jamal Banks last year, whether it's like an Isaiah Hunter this year. I think Barney does really well getting open on some of those like over routes or crosses. Like it just doesn't seem like they take advantage of that part of the field enough, especially with how good Emmett's been. You'd think you'd be able to kind
the
of
middle of the field seems like it's open. Like
yeah,
every play, it seems like it's there. It's a lot of the times it's not, and that's where correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure the chat will definitely. I feel like that's where a lot of Dylan's interceptions came from, is trying to get it to the middle of the field, and it's just the reading the defense is off.
Yeah, I don't know that maybe that's a place where Dylan doesn't see it particularly well. I'm not really sure, but it does feel like that. It does feel like Nebraska, in order to operate at its highest efficiency offensively, is going to have to find a way, especially when they've got an effective running game, where the linebackers are kind of creeping a little bit, safeties are creeping a little bit. You've got to find a way to get in behind them and take advantage of that, so that again you can loosen it back up for EJ, and you kind of have that back and forth where it is you're making them pay both for cheating up on the run and for staying back to kind of occupy the intermediate routes in the middle of the field. So like that's the thing. If Nebraska wants to operate at super high efficiency, they have to figure that out. You can't just say, Dylan doesn't see it well here, or maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. This is just, speculating. I'm not going to claim to know the cause of all those interceptions. There were 6. It's not like there was all those interceptions, right?
The cause is the defense catching it instead of the offense.
That is good. But for whatever the reason is, they're going to have to find a way to take advantage of the fact that that area of the field should be open, and they've got players that should be able to exploit that. They have to figure out a way to do that. Otherwise, it starts to become too easy to take away the other things if you feel like Nebraska can't beat you there.
To potentially end this on a slightly positive note, I said it earlier and I'll say it again, and somebody else mentioned it. The offensive line, I think, did a pretty damn good job against a physical, fast Penn State defensive line, and gave TJ more than enough time to throw on multiple occasions. He's sitting back there in the pocket waiting for things to open up, and then he's scrambling out to make some plays. But I just want to say that the offensive line has improved as the season has gone on, and especially against this defensive line specifically, they did a damn good job of giving their freshman quarterback time and allowing him to have the patience in the backfield, in the pocket, to make some plays.
Yeah, I think they had they had 3 sacks. I think the only one where he just never had a chance was down back by the goal line. It was 99. Got him. It looked like they expected him to bite on the fake and then slip it out for a screen, and he just didn't bite on anything.
Yeah, it was a tight end screen, so they kind of put a hand on, touched him, and then we're gonna go, and he didn't bite on the fake whatsoever.
Yeah, not even a little bit. So that's the only one that off the top of my head that he didn't have a chance on. So that's, you'll take that. You only have one passing play the entire game where the guy, that's my cat just hopping right up on the table there. What's up, Potato? How we doing, bud? Just he's hungry. It's 10:30.
Ravi is now a cat.
He needs to eat. What's up, bud? How we doing? Look at my fancy butthole. That's what he's about to do.
that's what's about. I'm waiting for it. I'm like, get that cat butt off the screen. Don't do it. Don't do it. Get out of here, you damn cat.
He's hungry. He wants fed. Traven asked, and we can end on this. He says, do you think wide receivers getting open were an issue? I don't think so. I think there's
kind of 22 for that.
Yeah, I can't, especially on initial watch and without an all-22, I can't give you a definitive answer. I think guys were getting open enough for Nebraska to be successful throwing the ball. I can only judge that based when they give me an all-22 replay or whatever. So there is, oh, here he comes. So there's only so much I can tell without having that film.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like anecdotally, it seems like guys are getting open frequently enough.
You're talking into a cat's butt.
Get out of here, bud. It seems like they're getting open frequently enough for Nebraska to have success in the passing game. I don't think that wouldn't be where my primary concern would be. Like that's not where I would start.
No, I wouldn't start at the wide receiver. I would start with the unfortunate lack of a run game.
Yeah, I mean
actually, honestly, I would start with the defense not being able to stop anything.
Yeah, I thought the offense moved the ball enough. If the defense had their typical game, I thought the defense moved the ball enough to give them at least a puncher's chance. Now, obviously, the circumstances put it to a point where Nebraska wasn't going to take field goals, and so the points end up being what they are. Mm-hmm. They probably had a couple more opportunities for field goals or whatever. Maybe you end up with like 16 or 19 if you're taking field goals instead of 10. But I think if the defense is able to keep it sort of in the neighborhood of where they had against every other team this year, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think literally every other team this year they've had. This was the first game they've given up over 400 yards of total offense. I know that. So, if Nebraska's defense is able to keep this in the ballpark of where it's been all year, then yeah, I think the offense moved the ball with enough consistency to at least give themselves a puncher's chance. Mm-hmm. Whether they win or not, I don't know that they were going to be efficient enough to win this game doing exactly what they did, but I do think they would have had at least an opportunity. But John asks, how do you get all 22? You have to ask the university. They have to approve you. It helps if you are credentialed or a coach. I think they're more likely to give it to a coach than they are a media member.
Yeah, I don't think the media. I don't know anybody in the media that's gotten all 22.
I know a lot of ex-players that have, and I'm trying.
Yep. we are trying.
It's hard.
There are attempts.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, it's not something they want to. It's not something they want to give out, which I get.
Yeah, which
you kind of
sense.
Want to control your own product there, but I would like it. If I can get some, I will let you know, and
mm-hmm.
I'll
don't
share.
Worry, you guys will see it if we get some all 22. We'll have Damon breaking some stuff down.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do, but that's all I got, Rico.
I got nothing. We went through all our negative. We hit on a little bit of positive. Nebraska's got Iowa on a short week.
That's
gonna be tough.
I hope it's better than the short week against Minnesota.
Yeah. Actually, hold on. I do have one more thing. And this is something that's been pissing me off to no end for the last week. Everybody since Wednesday. So everybody who is saying that the whole Raiola family is going to move on from Nebraska, and there are certain people on the internets who are saying, good, great, let's get rid of him. Dylan should leave, blah, 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 etc. We have TJ Lateef and etc. with quarterbacks, right? Everybody and their mom wants a deep quarterback room. Everybody wants to have a starter and a backup that you can insert for your starter and still feel pretty good about him being there.
100%.
Nebraska has that now.
Yeah.
So to sit here and say, oh, well, we have TJ, Dylan can go now. You're literally going back against everything that you have been talking about for years. You had Adrian Martinez and nobody else behind him. You had Tommy Armstrong and nobody behind him. Like you're sitting here and you're like, oh, well, now the backup, I like the backup, so the starter can peace out. Like, I don't care about it. You want to have at least two quarterbacks that you feel good about, regardless of whichever one has to start the game. So to sit here and say, oh, well, if Dayton decommitted, that means Dylan's leaving, he can leave. It pisses me off, honestly. Like it really gets under my skin, because I just want to sit here and just like shake the people and say, you want two quarterbacks on your roster. You want two good ones on your roster. You have two of them. Stop trying to stop. I know it's social media, but stop trying to force them out. Shut your mouths.
The only thing I'll say is, I agree with you. You're right. You want two quarterbacks you feel like you can trust. I also think that I think if by this time next year, TJ Lateef is the starting quarterback for whatever reason, I think that they'll be fine moving forward with TJ Lateef with a full offseason ready to go and whatever. I want to get past the point so two of these things can be true at once. Yes, you want Dylan and TJ back. However unlikely that seems to some because of NIL or playing time or whatever, you're never going to choose not to bring both of them back, right? Like let's start there. I also want to get to the point as a program where any single player leaving, no matter how important or touted or whatever, or coach leaving or AD leaving or whoever, feels like a body blow to the program, right? You lose a 5-star quarterback, yeah, that sucks for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to have a guy that you can feel like can take his place without it without it derailing your entire season or your entire program for the next however many years, right? Like that's the other part of that coin. Do you want both of them back? 100% absolutely. If one of them decides to leave, should the program be in a position where it's still okay? Also true. That's the only thing that I would say as any sort of context to what you said is no one should be trying to run off good quarterbacks. And if one of them chooses to leave, it should not be the end of the world.
Yes, I agree with that.
That's all.
I agree with that. But right now, as a program, that would be very problematic.
Yeah, I think, well, maybe, but by next year, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea what a second year TJ Lateef would look like with a full off season and a spring and a fall as the starter. That's a totally different version of this same player, right?
Yes.
Like, so just like I think Dylan was a different version of the player we saw last year. I thought Dylan was a much improved version of the player we saw last year too. So I thought his development took a big step forward. I would expect TJ's to do the same thing. And so I think Dylan at this point in their careers is better. Yeah, absolutely. I also think that if for whatever reason Dylan or TJ or whoever would decide to leave, that can't be something that derails your program. It just can't be. You got to you have to be in a spot that's better than that. That's it. But I agree. Stop trying to run off good players. Whatever the position is,
just stop it. Please. Please. That's all I'm asking.
All right. Well, that's the show for tonight. Appreciate you sticking around with us. It's Hail Varsity Postgame Show. Don't forget, you can catch me and DB next week. It'll be a short week, but we will have programming for you every day on Hurrdat Sports Live. So if you need to avoid your family or anything like that, we'll be able to help you out, at least for a couple. Listen, not everybody likes their family. At least or maybe you have to go to some in-laws you don't like. I lived that life for a while. It's, you got to do what you got to do. We'll give you a couple hours.
You're the worst.
What?
Nothing.
You gotta, we'll give you a couple hours on Thursday, a couple hours on Friday to get you ready for Iowa as well. But that'll all be on Hurrdat Sports Live. And don't forget, if anybody tells you, forget the program, forget Nebraska, forget this season, forget next season, whatever, they were never a fan in the first place. You don't need to talk to them anymore.
Also, I saw somebody who said that they were a season ticket holder and that they're done with the program. Can I have your tickets?
Yeah, if you want to,
can I have them? Like, if you have anybody in your life that's like, I've been with this program for this long and I've supported it for this long. I have season tickets and I'm done with it. I'm right here. Let me
hit
know.
your boy up.
Transfer those to me, please, and thank you.
Hit your boy up.
Yep.
Like that's fine. Listen, if I don't believe you. I think you're just emotional and mad, and that's fine. Everybody says things when they're emotional and mad. But if that's actually true, they were never fans in the first place. Don't worry about it.
Guess what? The person who said that they're canceling their season tickets, guess where they're going to be on Friday? Memorial Stadium.
We'll end it with this because this person is clearly very, very tied into the program. Penn State is a colossus and we are little crabs. Bob Rule isn't a good coach. Sorry.
Bob.
Let's get rid of Bob Rule.
Yeah. Bob Rule needs to go. I don't know who Bob Rule is, but get him out of here.
No more Bob Rule.
Tune into Hurrdat Sports Live Monday through Wednesday.
We'll have programming all week.
All week.
But we'll be live through Wednesday. We'll have programming all
7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And actually, on Monday, you will have Ravi, and myself or Austin. I think it's me.
I have no idea. I have no idea. We should figure that out.
It'll be Ravi and me on Monday. Damon, it will be me because Austin will be state football.
That's right. Yeah. He's got state football.
Yeah. So it'll be me and Ravi on Monday. DB will be back on Tuesday, I believe, to give you guys all of his insight and his thoughts from Happy Valley and what he saw with Nebraska while sitting up in the booth.
He will be on the show Monday, though. He'll join us.
We'll have him. We'll have him on the show, but it'll be me and Ravi. Hurrdat Sports Live. Rest of the week, 7 a.m., 10 a.m. Listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in on the Hurrdat Sports and the Hail Varsity socials on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter/X, and you can watch us on all of those platforms and keep in touch with us via the chat.
My biggest fan, Jay Saudi, says Ronald Lula and Bob Rule gotta go. Couldn't agree more, bud. Couldn't agree more.
Everybody have yourselves a great night.
Hope you have a great night. And listen, hey, just remember, we've only got one more regular season game left. It's better when football games happen, even when they look like this. Just remember that. One more of these left, guys. We'll be back on Friday with Hail Varsity Postgame as well. Have a good night, everybody.